And this is Mick, the Doctor of Digital.
And welcome to Music 101. Music One is created to empower music itself, and legendary icon in the music industry. Another week, another great episode. Motown's Songwriting Revolution. How Detroit's hit factory changed popular music forever.
Yes, indeed. In the early 1960s, a modest house on West Grand Boulevard in Detroit became the epicenter of a musical revolution. If you go to Detroit, you can check that house out, and it has been translated now into Hitsville, USA. Big sign on the house. So, founded by Barry Gordy Jr. in 1959 with an $800 loan from his family's savings club, Motown became one of the most successful businesses in America and one of the most influential forces in modern music. Motown Records didn't just produce hit songs, it fundamentally transformed how popular music was written, produced, and consumed. Through the genius of collaborative songwriting teams like Holland Dozier Holland, Smokey Robinson, Norman Whitfield, and Barrett Strong, Motown created a blueprint for modern pop that remains influential today. This exploration reveals the formulas, philosophies, and fascinating stories behind the songs that broke down cultural barriers and top charts worldwide.
Indeed, and thank you, Modon, for your legacy to the world. Until now, it's still outgoing for our generations to generation to come. So, Mr. Mick, when people talk about Motown's greatest songwriters, the name Holland Dozier Holland comes up constantly. What made these three so special?
Well, Brian Holland, Lamont Dozier, and Eddie Holland, collectively known as HDH, were essentially Motown's secret weapon during its golden era from 1963 to 1967. What set them apart was their division of labor and their ruthless efficiency. Brian Holland and Lamont Dozier typically handled the music, the melodies, arrangements, and production, while Eddie Holland focused on lyrics and vocal direction. But here's what's remarkable. During their peak years, they wrote and produced 12 number one pop hits and more than 40 top 20 singles. To put that in perspective, they were churning out chart toppers at a rate that would make today's hit makers look lazy. Their secret was treating songwriting like a craft, not waiting for inspiration to strike. They'd work in Motown Studio A, sometimes 12 hours a day, building songs from the ground up with the Funk Brothers House Band. They understood that a great song needed three things: an unforgettable hook that grabbed you in the first 10 seconds, lyrics simple enough that anyone could relate to them, and a rhythmic drive that made you want to move. Songs like Baby Love and You Can't Hurry Love for the Supremes exemplify this approach. They're deceptively simple on the surface, but every element is precisely calculated for maximum emotional and commercial impact. What's fascinating is that how they'd recycle musical ideas across different songs without making them sound repetitive. The rhythmic foundation of You Can't Hurry Love shares DNA with You Keep Me Hanging On, but the melodies and emotional context are completely different, so listeners never felt cheated. They also had an uncanny ability to match songs to artists. Heat Wave, which became Martha and the Vandellas' breakthrough hit in 1963, reaching number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, was written specifically for Martha Reeves' powerful, urgent vocal style. They knew that Diana Ross needed songs that showcased her delicate, almost fragile vocal tone, which is why Where Did Our Love Go worked so perfectly for the Supremes despite the Marvelettes rejecting it. In conclusion, HDH transforms songwriting from an art into a repeatable science without losing the emotional core that made their songs timeless, establishing a model that pop producers still follow today.
You mentioned they treated like a craft. Was there actually a formula they followed?
Absolutely. And Barry Gordy made no secret of it. He modeled Motown after Detroit's automotive assembly lines. He wanted a hit factory, not a boutique operation. The formula had several key components. First, every song started with a strong opening, what they called the hook, that had to grab listeners within the first few seconds because radio DJs might move on if a song didn't immediately connect. Think about the number one smash hit, I Can't Help Myself, Sugar Pie, Honey Bunch by the Four Tops from 1965. That bass line by James Jamerson hits you instantly, and you know exactly what song you're hearing before Levi Stubbs even starts singing. Second, they use what musicians call the four on the floor beat, a steady driving rhythm created by the bass drum hitting on every beat, which made the songs perfect for both radio and dancing. This wasn't complicated music theory, it was just a relentless pulse that got your foot tapping. Third, they employed call and response patterns borrowed from gospel music, where the lead singer would phrase something and the background singers would answer back, creating a conversation within the song. You can hear this clearly in Stop in the Name of Love, where Diana Ross sings the main lines and the other Supremes respond with supporting phrases. Fourth, they kept songs short, usually under 3 minutes, because that was the sweet spot for radio play. But here's what's fascinating. They also had a quality control meeting every Friday where the entire Motown staff would listen to the week's recordings and vote on which ones were potential hits. If a song didn't get enough votes, it went back to the drawing board or got shelved entirely. This was ruthless, but it worked. Songs like Where Did Our Love Go by the Supremes originally got rejected by the Marvelettes, who thought it was too simple and beneath them. HDH held onto it, reworked certain elements, gave it to the Supremes, and it became their first number one hit in August 1964, staying at the top for 2 weeks and launching them into superstardom. Another example of the formula working is Reach Out, I'll Be There by the Four Tops, which hit number one in October 1966. That song has everything: an immediately identifiable instrumental opening with flutes and oboe, which was unusual for Motown, a driving beat, Levi Stubbs' passionate vocal, and a message of support that anyone could relate to. The song structure builds tension and releases it perfectly, keeping listeners engaged for the full 2 minutes and 50 seconds. In conclusion, Motown's formula proved that commercial success and artistic quality weren't opposing forces. When applied with genuine emotion and expert craftsmanship, systemic approaches could produce magic.
Mr. Mick, Holland Dozier Holland were the commercial engine. But what about Smokey Robinson? His reputation seems different.
Robinson was Motown's poet in residence, and his approach contrasted beautifully with HDH's calculated efficiency. While HDH built songs like precision instruments, Smokey painted with words and melody. He had this incredible ability to take everyday emotional experiences, jealousy, longing, heartbreak, and express them through metaphors that felt both fresh and universal. Take The Tracks of My Tears, which he wrote and performed with the Miracles in 1965. The central image that he's smiling on the outside while crying on the inside, leaving tracks down his face, is simple but devastatingly effective. The song peaked at number 16 on the Billboard Hot 100, but its influence far exceeded its chart position. Everyone from Aretha Franklin to Mariah Carey has covered it. The genius of that song is how Smokey captures the disconnect between our public face and private pain, something everyone has experienced. Or consider My Girl, which Smokey wrote for the Temptations in 1964. The song spent 1 week at number one in March 1965, but what made it special was how Smokey captured the feeling of being completely in love using simple, concrete images: sunshine on a cloudy day, the sweetness in the month of May. He didn't need complicated language, he just needed genuine feeling. The song's opening, that iconic bass line by James Jamerson, is one of the most recognizable in popular music history. Bob Dylan once called Smokey America's greatest living poet, which might surprise people who think of pop songwriting as somehow less literary than other forms. But Smokey proved that working within the constraints of 3 minute pop songs didn't limit artistic expression, it concentrated it. Another Smokey masterpiece is Ooh, Baby, Baby, also from 1965, where he captures the desperation of trying to win back a lost love. The way he stretches out those vocal vowel sounds, the ooh part, conveys longing more effectively than any elaborate metaphor could. Smokey also wrote prolifically for other Motown artists. My Guy for Mary Wells in 1964 became her signature song and her only number one, staying at the top for 2 weeks. The song uses a series of comparisons, sticking to my guy like a stamp to a letter. They are simple but memorable. The hunter gets captured by the game, which he wrote for the Marvelettes in 1967, cleverly reverses the usual pursuit dynamic in love songs, with the pursuer becoming the pursued. What distinguished Smokey was his willingness to show vulnerability in his lyrics. Male singers in the early 60s were often expected to project confidence and control, but Smokey's songs acknowledged insecurity, heartbreak, and emotional need. That honesty connected with audiences who were tired of machismo posturing. In conclusion, while HDH showed that hits could be engineered, Smokey Robinson demonstrated that pop songwriting could achieve genuine poetry without sacrificing commercial appeal, giving Motown its emotional conscience.
Emotional conscience. Indeed, as Mr. Meg Motown's early sound was so polished and pop oriented. How did they adapt when music started changing in the late 60s?
That's where Norman Whitfield and Barrett Strong enter the story, and their partnership represents Motown's willingness to evolve. By 1968, the cultural landscape was shifting dramatically. The civil rights movement was intensifying, the Vietnam War was creating social upheaval, and musically, psychedelic rock and funk were emerging. The old formula of straightforward love songs was starting to feel dated. Norman Whitfield, who had been at Motown since the early 60s as a producer, teamed up with Barrett Strong, who'd actually been one of Motown's first recording artists back in 1960 with Money, That's What I Want, which reached number 23 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became a standard that the Beatles and many others would cover. Together, they pushed Motown into bold new territory. Their approach was experimental. They incorporated longer song structures, added psychedelic guitar effects, wrote about social issues rather than just romance, and embraced funk rhythms. Cloud Nine by the Temptations in 1968 was their breakthrough. It addressed poverty and drug addiction through the metaphor of getting high to escape reality, something unthinkable in earlier Motown material. It won a Grammy, proving that the new direction had both artistic and commercial merit. The song reached number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100, which was impressive given its subject matter. Then came I Heard It Through the Grapevine, which Whitfield produced for Gladys Knight and the Pips in 1967, reaching number 2, and then for Marvin Gaye in 1968 when it stayed at number 1 for 7 weeks. Whitfield's production was darker, more complex, with a brooding intensity that departed from Motown's typical sunshine. Marvin's version, in particular, has this sense of paranoia and betrayal that makes it feel almost cinematic. The song's length, over 7 minutes in some versions, would have been unthinkable in Motown's early days when radio play demanded brevity. War, written by Whitfield and Strong and performed by Edwin Starr in 1970, became one of the most explicit anti Vietnam War protest songs to reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The opening line, War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing, was a direct challenge to U.S. military policy, yet it sold over 3 million copies. That kind of a political engagement was a radical departure from Baby Love just 6 years earlier. Their masterpiece might be Papa Was a Rolling Stone by the Temptations in 1972, nearly 12 minutes long in its album version, with an extended instrumental intro that goes on for almost 4 minutes before any vocals enter. The single version, edited down to under 7 minutes, still won 3 Grammy Awards. The song tells the story of a man learning about his father's infidelities and abandonment on the day of his father's death, dealing with heavy themes of family dysfunction and disillusionment. Ball of Confusion, That's What the World Is Today, another Whitfield Strong collaboration performed by the Temptations in 1970, reads like a newspaper headline catalog of social problems: segregation, integration, aggravation, humiliation, delivered rapid fire over a funk groove. It peaked at number 3 and captured the fractured feeling of American society at the turn of the decade. In conclusion, Whitfield and Strong proved that Motown could evolve without losing its identity, ensuring the label's relevance as musical tastes changed throughout the turbulent late 60s and early 70s.
It seems like Motown was built on writing teams rather than individual songwriters, Mr. Mac. What was the unusual for the time?
It was distinctive, though not unique. The Brill Building in New York also used writing teams extensively, with partnerships like Jerry Goffin and Carole King or Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil. The Brill Building Blue Eyed Soul team of the Righteous Brothers had their biggest hit with You've Lost That Loving Feeling. But Motown took collaboration to another level and made it central to their identity. Berry Gordy understood something fundamental. Songwriting has different components: melody, rhythm, lyrics, arrangement, and different people excel at different aspects. By pairing complementary talents, he multiplied everyone's strengths. HDH perfected this model, but it appeared throughout the roster. Ashford and Simpson, Nicholas Ashford and Valerie Simpson, formed another legendary partnership, specializing in duets and love songs. They wrote Ain't No Mountain High Enough for Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell in 1967, which reached number 19, and the song later became a number one hit for Diana Ross in 1970, and a completely reimagined version that turned it from a duet into a solo showcase with dramatic spoken word intro. Their strength was capturing the push and pull dynamic between two people in a relationship, which made perfect sense given they were romantic partners themselves, eventually marrying in 1974. Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing, another Ashford Simpson composition for Marvin and Tammy, reached number 8 in 1968 and showcased their ability to write conversational lyrics that felt like genuine dialogue between lovers. The collaborative model also created a built in quality filter. If you're working with a partner, weak ideas get challenged and refined before they reach the recording stage. This contrasts with solo songwriters who might fall in love with their own ideas without objective feedback. Motown also encouraged collaboration across roles. Producers would suggest lyrical changes, singers would influence arrangements, and the Funk Brothers, the session musicians, were encouraged to add their own flourishes. James Jamerson's bass lines, for instance, weren't always written out. He'd create them on the spot during recording sessions, and they'd become integral to the song's identity. The bass line for My Girl is probably as famous as the melody itself, and it came from Jamerson improvisation in the studio. Another example is What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, which was actually co written with Ronaldo Obi Benson of the Four Tops and Al Cleveland. Benson witnessed police brutality and an anti war protest in Berkeley and brought the initial idea to Marvin, who developed it into the masterpiece that addressed war, poverty, and environmental degradation. The song reached number 2 in 1971 and spawned an entire album that's now considered one of the greatest ever recorded. The collaborative approach also extended to The Corporation, a songwriting and production team created specifically to develop the Jackson Five. The group included Berry Gordy himself, along with Freddie Perrin, Alfonso Mizell, and Deke Richards. They wrote and produced I Want You Back, ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There, four consecutive number one hits in 1969 and 1970 that launched Michael Jackson's career. Each member brought different strengths. Gordy understood commercial appeal, Perrin had conservatory training, Mizell brought jazz influences, and Richard had rock sensibilities. In conclusion, Motown's collaborative culture created a creative ecosystem where songs were refined through multiple perspectives, resulting in material that was stronger than any individual could create alone, a lesson modern music production has largely forgotten in the era of bedroom producers.
This hit factory concept sounds almost mechanical. How did Motown maintain artistic quality while operating like a standard profit making venture?
Well, that's the fascinating paradox at Motown's heart. It was simultaneously a ruthless business operation and a nurturing artistic community. Berry Gordy did model his approach on Detroit's auto industry, but he was assembling songs, not cars, and that required preserving the human element. Here's how it worked in practice. Songwriters would come in each morning, often working in small studios within the Motown building on West Grand Boulevard, which everyone called Hitsville, USA. They'd collaborate on songs, sometimes writing 3 or 4 in a single day, trying out different melodic ideas, with the Funk Brothers playing in the legendary Studio A, which was actually converted from a garage and had a concrete floor that gave recordings a distinctive sound. The room was small and cramped, which actually helped create a tight, focused sound. Once a song was written, it would be arranged, horn parts added, background vocal harmonies added as well, and worked out. Then came the famous Friday morning quality control meetings, where everyone from secretaries to executives would vote on whether a song was a hit. This might sound cold, but it actually created accountability and prevented personal ego from overriding commercial common sense. Martha Reeves, before she became a star with the Vandellas, worked as a secretary and got to vote alongside Berry Gordy on which songs would be released. This democratic process meant that a song had to connect with regular people, not just industry insiders. Artists also went through what Motown called artist development, run by etiquette coach Maxine Powell, choreographer Charlie Hatkins, and musical director Maurice King. Powell taught performers stage presence, how to handle press interviews, even how to get in and out of limousines gracefully. Skills that help Motown artists cross over to mainstream venues like the Copa Room and the Ed Sullivan Show. Charlie Atkins created the synchronized dance moves that became the Temptations' trademark, those smooth steps and spins that made their performances visually exciting. Maurice King worked with singers on phrasing, breath control, and how to interpret lyrics for maximum emotional impact. But Motown also created genuine community. Stevie Wonder described everyone as family, with older artists mentoring younger ones. When Diana Ross and the Supremes became massive stars in 1964, they'd still rehearse in the same building where new artists were getting started. The songwriters competed with each other. There was definitely rivalry between HDH and other teams, but it was friendly competition that raised everyone's game. Berry Gordy also reinvested profits into the company and the artists, which was unusual for a record label at that time. He built Motown into one of the most successful businesses in America, proving that capitalism opened doors for all Americans if they had talent, drive, and business sense. The quality control extended to every aspect of production. Motown recordings had a distinctive sound, partly because of the Funk Brothers' musicianship, partly because of the unique acoustics of Studio A, and partly because engineer Mike McLean understood how to capture that sound on tape. The tambourine on the backbeat, the prominent bass, the crisp snare drum, these elements became sonic signatures that made Motown records instantly recognizable on the radio. In conclusion, Motown succeeded because it balanced industrial efficiency with artistic nurturing, proving that business discipline and creative excellence could coexist when guided by someone who understood both worlds intimately.
Mr. Mick, we're talking about songs from 60 years ago. Why should people today care about Motown songwriting approaches?
Well, because everything virtually in modern pop, R&B, and soul traces back to innovations Motown pioneered, whether today's artists realize it or not. Let's start with structure. The verse, chorus, bridge, chorus format that dominates popular music today. Motown didn't invent it, but it perfected it and proved it was the most effective framework for radio friendly hits. The emphasis on the hook, that one melodic phrase that gets stuck in your head, comes directly from the Motown playbook. Berry Gordy insisted that every song needed a memorable hook within the first 15 seconds, a principle that's even more critical today when listeners can skip songs instantly on streaming platforms. When you hear songs by Bruno Mars like Uptown Funk, he's deliberately channeling Motown's rhythmic sensibility and vocal arrangements. The horn stabs, the call and response vocals, the focus on groove over complexity, that's pure Motown DNA. Mark Ronson, who produced Uptown Funk, has spoken extensively about studying Motown production techniques. When producers talk about the pocket, that groove where rhythm and melody lock together perfectly, they're describing something the Funk Brothers mastered and Motown songwriters built their compositions around. Modern R&B's emphasis on melisma, those vocal runs where singers stretch one syllable across multiple notes, has roots in Motown's gospel influenced approach. When you hear someone like Beyonce or Ariana Grande adding elaborate vocal runs to their songs, they're drawing from a tradition that Motown brought into mainstream pop. Even hip hop, which might seem distant from Motown's sound, relies heavily on sampling Motown records. Jay Dilla, one of hip hop's most influential producers who grew up in Detroit, built his entire aesthetic sound around chopping up Motown and soul samples, creating a style that influenced everyone from Kanye West to Kendrick Lamar. Countless hip hop tracks have sampled Papa Was a Rolling Stone, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, and other Motown classics. Motown broke through the pop barrier so completely that by 1966, the Supremes had 12 number ones, more than any group except the Beatles during that period. When Beyonce creates a creative empire, when Kendrick Lamar wins a Pulitzer Prize, when Tyler, the creator, controls every aspect of his output, they're walking through doors Motown kicked open. Even the Beatles acknowledged Motown's influence. Paul McCartney said they tried writing songs that could sit alongside Motown records, which is remarkable considering the Beatles were supposedly the gold standard. The Beatles recorded several Motown covers early in their career, including Please Mr. Postman by the Marvelettes and You Really Got a Hold on Me by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. Motown also proved that music with substance could achieve commercial success. You didn't have to choose between artistic integrity and popular appeal. When Marvin Gaye insisted on releasing What's Going On, despite Berry Gordy's resistance, he proved that audiences would embrace socially conscious music if it was crafted with the same care as love songs. The lesson enabled later artists to tackle serious subjects without abandoning commercial ambitions. The collaborative model Motown perfected has influenced how music is created today. When we celebrate individual artists, most successful songs involve teams of writers, producers, and musicians. Max Martin, who's written or produced hits for Taylor Swift, The Weeknd, and countless others, works in a collaborative environment that echoes Motown's approach. Multiple songwriters contributing ideas, rigorous quality control, and willingness to rewrite until a song is perfect. The Motown approach to artist development also influenced modern music education and artist training programs. Contemporary labels still recognize that artists need more than just talent. They need stage presence, media training, and professional polish, all elements Motown systemized. In conclusion, Motown's songwriting legacy persists because it established fundamental principles about melody, rhythm, emotional directness, and collaborative creativity that remain the foundation of popular music, making them not just historically important, but actively relevant to anyone who cares about how great songs are crafted. The story of Motown songwriters is ultimately about transformation, taking the musical traditions of gospel, blues, and jazz and distilling them into concise, powerful pop songs that could reach anyone, anywhere. Holland Dozier Holland, Smokey Robinson, Norman Whitfield, Barrett Strong, Ashford and Simpson, and dozens of other talented writers created more than just hits. They created a language of feeling that transcended social, geographic, and cultural boundaries. Their methods, collaborative writing, systemic refinement, emotional authenticity, and willingness to evolve, remain as instructive today as they were 60 years ago. Motown proved that great art and great commerce could coexist, that music could break down barriers while climbing charts, and that Detroit's hit factory could change the world, one 3-minute song at a time. In conclusion, the beats, hooks, and melodies that they crafted continue to resonate through contemporary music, proving that true innovation becomes timeless.
Very well said, Mr. Mick, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Yes, people, Motown Songwriting Revolution it takes listeners deep into the heart of an era that redefined the sound of American music. From the humble beginning of Berry Gordy's Detroit studio to its rise as a global powerhouse, Motown became synonymous with soul, style, and storytelling. Mr. Mike, would you like to plug in something?
Sure, I appreciate the opportunity. Connect with me at G. Mick Smith, Doctor of Digital PhD, on LinkedIn. Also, I'm the person who writes the book, Grow the Business, for those clients, and also pick a couple volumes on Amazon, On Track, Ian Hunter, and Burning America. Also, listen to the Doctor of Digital podcast.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Meg, the Doctor Digital, and please do listen to our baby podcast, Mental Health 101. Mental Health 101 is created to empower our mental health awareness. So, Mr. Meg, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you as well. Until next time, Deus Volt.
More to come, people. See you soon.